She thought he would sleep on the couch the first night, but then she heard the door close and his voice in the dark. The rain fell in relentless sheets over Toronto, painting the city in a gray haze that mirrored Sophia Bennett's mood. At 23, she had always imagined her life would be a vibrant canvas by now, maybe not a masterpiece, but at least a sketch of her own making. Instead, she stood in the cramped living room of her father's rundown apartment in Little Italy, staring at a contract that felt like a noose tightening around her future. The paper, crisp and official, bore her name in bold ink beside another. Alessandro Moretti, her husband, as of 3 hours ago. Sophia's fingers trembled as she set the contract on the coffee table, its surface scarred from years of neglect. She could still smell the stale whiskey on her father's breath from the night before when he had confessed the truth. His gambling debts had spiraled beyond control, and he had offered her hand in marriage to settle them. "It's just business, Soph," he had slurred, avoiding her eyes. "Moretti isn't a monster. He'll treat you fine." Fine. The word echoed in her mind, hollow and unconvincing. She had met Alessandro only once before today, when he had appeared at their door like a storm cloud in a tailored suit. His eyes, a piercing shade of slate blue, had sized her up not with malice, but with the cold precision of a man who calculated risks for a living. He was 32, a titan in Toronto's corporate world, with whispers of shadier dealings trailing him like smoke. CEO of Moretti Enterprises, owner of half the city's skyline, and now, inexplicably, her husband. "You have 24 hours to say goodbye to your life," he had said that day, his voice smooth but unyielding, like the edge of a blade wrapped in silk. She had wanted to scream, to tell him she wasn't a commodity to be traded, but her father's desperation had silenced her. So she had packed a single suitcase, leaving behind her part-time barista job, her half-finished sociology degree, and the tiny apartment she shared with a roommate in Kensington Market. Her dreams of opening a community art studio felt like a child's fantasy now. The registry office ceremony had been as cold as the November rain. Alessandro stood beside her, his presence commanding despite his silence. He had worn a black suit that cost more than her father's entire debt, his dark hair neatly combed, a faint stubble shadowing his jaw. Sophia, in a simple cream dress, borrowed from her cousin, felt like an imposter. She had kept her eyes on the officiant, refusing to meet Alessandro's gaze. Convincing herself he saw her as a burden, a naive girl who couldn't tell a Merlot from a Cabernet. He would keep his distance, she told herself. This marriage was a formality, nothing more. Standing in the elevator of his Yorkville penthouse, Sophia felt the weight of her decision. The mirrored walls reflected her pale face, her hazel eyes wide with uncertainty. Her auburn hair, usually loose and wild, was pinned back in a futile attempt to look composed. The elevator dinged, and the doors slid open to reveal a world she didn't belong in. Polished marble floors stretched endlessly. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the glittering Toronto skyline, and sleek furniture screamed wealth. This wasn't a home, it was a fortress. Alessandro stood by the windows, his back to her, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. The city lights cast shadows across his broad shoulders, and for a moment, Sophia wondered what kind of man married a stranger to settle a debt. He turned, his gaze locking onto hers, and her breath caught. There was something new in his eyes. Not the cold calculation from before, but a flicker of curiosity, maybe even challenge. "Your room?" he said, nodding toward a hallway. His voice was low, accented faintly with his Italian heritage, each word deliberate. "I had it prepared," she nodded, clutching her suitcase handle tighter. "Thank you," she managed, her voice barely. Above a whisper, he didn't respond, just watched her as she walked past, her sneakers silent on the marble. The hallway led to a bedroom that dwarfed her old apartment. A plush rug warmed the floor. An armchair sat by a window overlooking the CN Tower, and a sleek wardrobe stood against one wall. She set her suitcase down, her hands still shaking, changed into a simple cotton nightgown, the one piece of her old life that felt safe. The apartment was eerily quiet as she stood by the window, the city's glow casting soft shadows across the room. She adjusted her nightgown, her fingers lingering on the fabric, and stared at the leather sofa in the corner. Picturing Alessandro there, distant and detached. That's how it would be, she told herself. Marriage on paper, nothing more. She crossed her arms, her pulse steadying, the silence pressing against her ears. Then she heard it. The soft click of the door. Her eyes snapped to the doorway, her heart lurching. Alessandro stood there, his silhouette framed by the faint light from the hallway. His suit jacket gone, his shirt sleeves rolled up, his slate blue eyes locked onto hers. A faint smile tugged at his lips, both amused and challenging. "You really thought I'd sleep on the couch?" His voice was a low rumble, smooth as velvet but edged with steel, cutting through the quiet like a spark. He stepped into the room, stopping just inside the threshold, his presence filling the space. The scent of sandalwood and something darker, intoxicating, drifted toward her, making her breath hitch. Sophia straightened, her bare feet firm on the rug, her chin lifting defiantly. "I thought you'd keep your distance," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "This is just a contract, isn't it?" His smile deepened, his eyes never leaving hers. "It's more than that, Kara," he murmured, his tone softening, carrying a warmth that unsettled her. "This is our home, and I'm not a man who sleeps on couches." Her pulse raced, his words hanging between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. He didn't move closer, but the air crackled with tension, his gaze holding hers like a promise or a challenge. "Sleep well, Piccola," he said, his voice low, almost tender. "Tomorrow, we'll start to learn who you really are." He turned, leaving the door ajar, his footsteps fading down the hallway. Sophia exhaled, her hands unclenching, the room suddenly too quiet. She had underestimated Alessandro Moretti, and in that moment, she realized he might have underestimated her, too. As the city hummed beyond the windows, one thing was certain. Her life had changed forever, and the man who had just walked away was no longer just a name on a contract. Sophia woke to sunlight streaming through the penthouse windows, the Toronto skyline sparkling under a rare November sun. Her body tensed as she recalled the night before, Alessandro's voice in the doorway, his words cutting through the dark. "You really thought I'd sleep on the couch?" She stood by the window in her room, her nightgown replaced by jeans and a soft gray sweater, her auburn hair loose. The memory of his slate blue eyes, both challenging and warm, lingered, stirring. A mix of defiance and curiosity. She ventured into the main living area, the penthouse even grander in daylight. The scent of freshly brewed coffee hit her first, followed by the sight of Alessandro at the kitchen island, his back to her. He wore a fitted white dress shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, and dark trousers. A tablet rested on the counter, his fingers scrolling through stock charts. The casualness clashed with the cold CEO she had met yesterday. Making her pause, she cleared her throat, and he turned, his gaze locking onto hers with a faint smile. "Morning, Sophia," he said, his voice smoother than the coffee he poured into a second mug. "I trust you slept well." Her cheeks warmed, remembering his presence in the doorway. "Well enough," she replied, aiming for nonchalance as she crossed to the island. She took the mug, their fingers brushing briefly, sending a jolt through her. She pulled back, gripping the mug tightly. "You're up early." "Always am," he said, leaning against the counter. "Business doesn't sleep, and neither do I." He nodded toward a plate of croissants and fruit. "Eat. We need to talk." Sophia's stomach twisted, but she slid onto a bar stool, picking at a croissant. "Talk about what?" she asked, keeping her tone even. "The contract, my father's debt, or the fact that we're strangers sharing a home?" His smile widened, amusement glinting in his eyes. "All of it, cara mia. But let's start with the rules." He set his mug down, his posture shifting to something more commanding. "This marriage may have been born of necessity, but it's real. You're my wife, and that comes with expectations." Her fingers tightened around the mug. "Expectations?" she echoed, her voice sharpening. "Playing the perfect trophy wife, smiling for your business associates while you parade me around." Jaw tightened, but his tone remained calm. "You underestimate me, Sophia. I don't need a trophy. I need a partner, someone who can hold their own in my world." He leaned closer, his voice dropping. You're not just a debt settled. You're a choice I made. Her breath caught, his words landing like a stone in still water. A choice? She wanted to laugh, to call him out, but the intensity in his eyes stopped her. He straightened, gesturing to the penthouse. You'll have everything you need, clothes and allowance, access to my staff, but you'll also learn my business, my people. You'll stand beside me, not behind me. Sophia's mind raced. She had expected demands, maybe indifference, but this was a challenge, an invitation to a world she didn't understand. And if I refuse? She asked, lifting her chin. What happens then? His eyes narrowed, studying her like a puzzle. You won't, he said simply. Because you're not the kind of woman who runs from a fight. The words stirred something deep inside her. He saw her, not the scared girl who had signed her life away, but the one who dreamed of building something. Meaningful, she swallowed, setting the mug down. You don't know me, Alessandro. Then let's fix that, he said, his voice softer, almost coaxing. Tell me who Sophia Bennett is. Yeah, I'm not the daughter of a gambler, not my wife on paper. You. Her heart thudded. No one had asked her that in years. She hesitated, then said, I'm someone who believes in second chances. I wanted to open an art studio, a place where people could create, heal, connect. I'm stubborn, probably too much for my own good, and I hate being told who I'm supposed to be. She met his gaze defiant. That's me. Your turn. He didn't answer right away, his expression unreadable. Then slowly he said, I'm a man who builds empires and buries mistakes. I don't trust easily, but when I do, it's absolute. Don't know, never. Make a deal I can't win. He paused, his eyes softening. But I also believe in loyalty, Sophia. Earn mine, and I'll give you the world. The air crackled, heavy with unspoken promises. She wanted to push back, but something in his voice held her, an honesty she hadn't expected. He reached for a notepad, scribbling, We learn each other one day at a time. Tonight we're dining with my investors. You'll come. Where's something from? The wardrobe in your room. Already planning my life? She asked, half teasing, half wary. Not your life, he said, sliding the notepad toward her. Ours. Start with tonight. Sophia stared at the note, her pulse racing. This breakfast wasn't just a meeting, it was a pact. A first step into a dance she wasn't sure she could follow. But as she met Alessandro's gaze, she felt a spark of curiosity. Maybe she could meet his challenge. Fine, she said, standing, her voice steadier. Tonight. But don't expect me to play by all your rules. His smile returned, slow and knowing. I wouldn't dream of it, Piccola. As she walked back to her room, his words lingered. They were strangers, bound by a contract, but this morning had shifted something. Alessandro Moretti wasn't just her husband. He was a mystery she might want to unravel. But first, she had to survive dinner with Toronto's elite. And something told her that would be the real test. The chandelier above the private dining room at Lille sparkled like a constellation, casting soft light over the polished mahogany table. Sophia sat beside Alessandro, her emerald green dress, a sleek floor-length gown from the wardrobe he had provided, hugging her frame in a way that made her feel both powerful and exposed. Toronto's elite surrounded them, investors in tailored suits, their partners dripping in diamonds, all laughing over glasses of Bordeaux. The restaurant, perched atop the CN Tower, offered a breathtaking view of the city lights below, but Sophia felt like she was walking a tightrope above an abyss. So, Alessandro, said Marcus Blackwood, a silver-haired man whose steel company had made him one of Canada's wealthiest. You've been keeping secrets? When did you find time to court such a lovely bride? Alessandro's hand found hers under the table, his thumb brushing her knuckles. The touch was gentle, but she felt the tension in his grip. Sophia and I have known each other for some time, he said smoothly. Sometimes the best things happen when you least expect them. Victoria Blackwood, Marcus's wife, leaned forward with predatory interest. How romantic, tell us, dear. What do? Are you in the arts? You have that creative look about you. Sophia felt the weight of their gazes, the subtle judgment in Victoria's tone. These people could smell weakness from across the room. "I'm exploring my options," she said, lifting her chin. "I've always been passionate about community development through art. There's something powerful about giving people a space to create, to find their voice." "How noble," Victoria said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "And expensive, I imagine. Lucky for you that Alessandro can afford such charitable pursuits." The barb hit its mark, but before Sophia could respond, Alessandro's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Sophia's vision isn't charity, Victoria, it's investment. Smart businesses recognize that strong communities create loyal customers. My wife understands value in ways that might surprise you." The table fell, silent for a heartbeat. Sophia felt a rush of warmth at his defense, but also something darker. He was protecting her, yes, but he was also claiming her, marking his territory. Speaking of value, Marcus interjected, clearly eager to change the subject. "The waterfront development project is moving faster than expected. We'll need those permits expedited if we want to break ground by spring." Alessandro nodded, but Sophia caught something in his expression. A flicker of calculation that made her stomach tighten. "The city council is being cooperative," he said. "Councilman Rodriguez has been particularly helpful." Sophia knew that name. Rodriguez represented her old neighborhood, the area where her father still lived. Her families were being pushed out by rising rents and luxury developments. Helpful. How? She found herself asking, though she wasn't sure why. Alessandro's grip on her hand tightened slightly. Efficient processing, cutting through red tape. But Marcus laughed, wine loosening his tongue. "More than that, Rodriguez has been ensuring the right properties become available." Amazing how quickly people sell when they get the right offer. The words hit Sophia like ice water. She thought of Mrs. Chen, her elderly neighbor who had been forced to sell her family's bakery last month. Of the young couple with twin babies who had lost their apartment when their building was suddenly deemed unfit for habitation. "What kind of offers?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. Alessandro's thumb stopped moving against her hand. "Sophia," but she couldn't stop. It must be difficult for families who've lived there for generations. "Are there relocation programs? Assistance for small businesses?" The table exchanged glances. Victoria's smile turned sharp. "How sweet that you care about the little people," she said. "But progress requires sacrifice. Those neighborhoods were declining anyway. We're bringing jobs, increasing property values." "Whose property values?" Sophia asked, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Alessandro's hand released hers entirely. "Perhaps we should order dessert." But Marcus waved him off, clearly enjoying the drama. "Let her speak, Alessandro. Your wife has opinions." "I just think," Sophia said, feeling the ground shift beneath her, "that development should include the people who already live there, not replace them. And I think," Victoria said with ice in her voice, "that you have a lot to learn about how the world actually works." The dinner continued, but Sophia felt like she was watching it from outside herself. Alessandro was charming, powerful, magnetic. But every story about permits and city council votes, every casual mention of properties acquired and families relocated, felt like another piece of a puzzle she didn't want to complete. In the car ride home, they sat in silence. The city lights blurred past the windows, but all Sophia could see were the faces of her former neighbors, the ones who had already been pushed out. "You're angry, Alessandro," said finally. "I'm confused," she replied, not looking at him. "This morning you talked about partnership. Tonight I felt like a prop." "You held your own beautifully. That's not the point." She turned to face him, her eyes blazing. "Are you displacing families, Alessandro? Are you the reason people in my neighborhood can't afford to live there anymore?" His jaw tightened. "Business is complicated, Sophia. Sometimes short-term disruption leads to long-term improvement." "That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give you right now." The car pulled up to their building, but neither of them moved. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken accusations and growing mistrust. "I thought I was beginning to understand you," she said quietly. "You are. This is part of who I am. The question is whether you can accept it." She looked at him then, really looked. The man who had defended her at dinner, who had called her his choice, who had promised her the world, but also the man who might be destroying other people's worlds to build his empire. I don't know, she admitted. For the first time since she had met him, Alessandro Moretti looked uncertain. That scared her more than his confidence ever had. Sophia couldn't sleep. She stood at her bedroom window, watching the city breathe below, her mind churning with everything she had learned at dinner. The emerald dress lay crumpled on the chair where she had thrown it, replaced by cotton pajamas. That felt like armor against the silk sheets Alessandro had provided. At 3 a.m, she heard his footsteps in the hallway, then the soft knock on her door. Sophia, I know you're awake. She didn't answer, but she didn't lock the door either. He entered quietly, still wearing his dress shirt and trousers from dinner, though his tie was gone and his hair was disheveled. In the moonlight, he looked younger, less certain.
We need
to talk, he said. Now you want to talk? Not when I asked about the families you've displaced? He moved to the window beside her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, feel the warmth radiating from his body. You want the truth? He asked. The whole truth? Something in his voice made her turn to face him. Yes, my father was a construction worker. Came here from Sicily with nothing but calloused hands and a dream. He worked on those same buildings I now own, breaking his back for men who saw him as disposable. His voice was quiet, raw. He died when I was 15. Heart attack on a job site. No insurance, no pension. The company he worked for 20 years wouldn't even pay for his funeral. Sophia felt her anger waver, but she held on to it. That doesn't justify what you're doing now, doesn't it? He turned to her, his eyes blazing. I swore I'd never be powerless again. Never let anyone I cared about be powerless. Every property I acquire, every development I build, it's one more piece of security. One more guarantee that I'll never be that scared 15-year-old boy again. But you're creating other scared 15-year-olds, their families losing everything. He was silent for a long moment. Then he reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a folded paper. Rodriguez has been taking bribes, he said, handing it to her. Not from me. From Blackwood Industries. Been paying him to fast-track evictions to condemn buildings that are perfectly habitable. Sophia unfolded the paper. Bank statements, email exchanges, a web of corruption that made her stomach turn. I've been gathering evidence for months, Alessandro continued. Rodriguez is going down, and when he does, those families will have legal grounds to sue for wrongful eviction. They'll get their homes back, plus damages. She stared at him, the paper trembling in her hands. Then why didn't you tell me? Let me think you were the villain. 'Cause I am a villain, Sophia. Just not the one you thought. He ran a hand through his hair. I've done things, made deals, hurt people. The difference is I've been trying to make it right. The waterfront development will include affordable housing. 40% of the units will be reserved for families displaced by Blackwoods. Schemes. And yes, I'll take a loss on it. A big one. The revelation should have relieved her, but instead, it made everything more complicated. The man standing before her wasn't a monster, but he wasn't a hero either. He was something far more dangerous. He was human. Why are you telling me this now? He asked. Because tonight, watching you stand up to those vultures, seeing you care about people you don't even know anymore, I realized something. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. I don't want you to accept who I am. Sophia, I want you to help me become someone better. The air between them crackled with electricity. She could feel the heat of his body, see the vulnerability in his eyes that he was trying so hard to hide. Alessandro, she began, but he cut her off. I know this isn't what you signed up for. I know you married me to save your father, not to fix me, but I can't stop thinking about what you said yesterday. About second chances. Her breath caught. What are you asking me? To try. To see if this thing between us could be real. Not just the contract, not just the convenience. Real. Should have said no. Should have reminded him that their marriage was a business transaction, that she barely knew him, that trust had to be earned. Instead, she found herself stepping closer. If I say yes, she whispered, no more secrets. No more letting me think. The worst of you to protect some image. If we're going to try, we do it honestly. And if I can't give you honesty, if some truths are too dangerous, then we'll figure it out together. But no more lies, Alessandro. I won't be your wife and your enemy. He reached up, his fingers brushing her cheek with infinite gentleness. You could never be my enemy, Piccola. You're the first person in 15 years who's made me want to be worthy of something. When he kissed her, it wasn't the kiss of a contract or convenience. It was the kiss of a man falling, of a woman catching him. It tasted like truth and tasted like danger, like promises that might destroy them both. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. This changes everything, she said. I know. We could destroy each other. I know that too. She smiled then, the first real smile she had given him. Good. I've never been interested in safe choices. Outside, the city slept, unaware that in a penthouse high above, two people had just decided to rewrite the rules of their own story. Whether it would end in triumph or tragedy remained to be seen. But for the first time since she had signed that contract, Sophia Bennett Moretti was exactly where she chose to be. 6 months later, Sophia stood in the empty warehouse in her old neighborhood. Sunlight streaming through the industrial windows, painting golden rectangles on the concrete floor. The space smelled of fresh paint and possibility. The easels. Arrive tomorrow, she called out, her voice echoing in the vast space. And the pottery wheels next week? Alessandro emerged from what would become the business office, his sleeves rolled up, a smudge of paint on his cheek. He looked nothing like the intimidating CEO she had married. He looked like a man who had learned to dream again. Rodriguez pled guilty this morning, he said, pulling out his phone to show her the news alert. Full confession.
Backwood Industries
Is facing federal charges. Sophia felt a surge of satisfaction. The legal battle had been long and brutal, but they had won. More importantly, they had won together. What about the families? Settlements start processing next month. Mrs. Chen gets her bakery back, plus enough to renovate and expand. His smile was soft, proud. She wants to name a pastry after you. After us, Sophia corrected, crossing to him. Without thinking, she reached up to wipe the paint from his cheek. The gesture was so natural now, so easy. He caught her hand, pressing it against his face. Have I told you today that I love you? The words still made her heart skip. They had come slowly, carefully, built on a foundation of shared truth and hard-won trust. No dramatic declarations or movie-perfect moments, just quiet admissions in the dark, whispered against her skin, proved through actions more than words. Only 3 times, she teased. You're slipping, Moretti. Sophia Moretti, he murmured, using her married name the way he always did when he wanted to remind her that she had chosen to keep it. Ti amo più della mia vita. I love you more than my life too, she whispered back, her Italian still clumsy, but sincere. The sound of voices in the street made them break apart. Through the windows, they could see a small crowd gathering. Mrs. Chen was there, along with other neighbors, families who had been displaced and were now returning home. They're here for the unveiling, Sophia realized, her stomach fluttering. With nerves? Ready? Alessandro asked, taking her hand. She looked around the space that would officially become the Moretti Community Arts Center tomorrow. After months of planning, fundraising, and rebuilding trust with the community, her dream was becoming reality. But it was bigger than she had ever imagined. Not just an art studio, but a true community hub. Classes for children, support groups for seniors, a business incubator for local entrepreneurs. Ready, she said? They walked outside together, where a small stage had been set up. The crowd was larger than expected, maybe 200 people gathered in the street. Some faces were familiar, others new. All of them were here because they believed in second chances. Sophia took the microphone with steady hands. 6 months ago, she would have been terrified. Now, with Alessandro's presence beside her and the community's support surrounding her, she felt invincible. When I was a little girl, she began, my mother used to tell me that art wasn't about creating something beautiful. It was about creating something true, something that helped people see themselves, their world, their possibilities differently. She found Mrs. Chen in the crowd, the elderly woman beaming with pride. This neighborhood taught me that truth. The community isn't just about living in the same place. It's about choosing to build something together, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. She glanced at Alessandro, who nodded encouragingly. The Moretti Community Arts Center isn't just my dream anymore. It belongs to all of us. Proof that when we fight for each other, when we refuse to let anyone decide our worth for us, we can create something extraordinary. The applause was thunderous. As Sophia and Alessandro pulled the canvas covering away from the building's new sin, revealing the center's name in bold, beautiful letters, she felt something she had never experienced before. She felt home. Later that evening, after the last guest had left and the cleanup was done, Sophia and Alessandro sat on the front steps of the center, sharing a bottle of wine and watching the sunset over the city skyline. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "The life you gave up? It's a simpler version where you just made money and didn't worry about anyone else?" Alessandro was quiet for a long moment, swirling the wine in his glass. "I regret a lot of things," he said finally. "But marrying you isn't one of them. Even if it started as a contract, even if we both went into it for the wrong reasons." "Were they wrong reasons?" Sophia mused. "You needed someone who could see past your reputation. I needed someone who could see past my circumstances. Maybe the universe knew what it was doing. The universe, or your father's terrible gambling addiction." She laughed, bumping his shoulder with hers. Maybe both. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their neighborhood come alive with evening light. Children played in the street, where there had once been empty lots. The smell of Mrs. Chun's baking drifted from her reopened shop. Young couples walked hand in hand, no longer afraid they would be forced out tomorrow. "I have something for you," Alessandro said suddenly, reaching into his jacket pocket. "If it's expensive jewelry, I'm throwing it at your head," Sophia warned. "We've talked about this. It's not jewelry." He pulled out a folded document, official looking and legal. "It's a contract." Sophia's blood chilled. "Alessandro, if you're having second thoughts, ... Double quotes. Open it." She unfolded the paper. But instead of divorce papers or some new business arrangement, she found something impossible. It was their original marriage contract. The one her father had signed, the one that had bound her to Alessandro like a chain around her ankle. It had been shredded into dozens of pieces, then carefully taped back together. Across the top, in Alessandro's bold handwriting, were the words "void" replaced by "choice." At the bottom, 2 new signatures. Fresh ink. Today's date. A new contract. Simple, elegant, written in language that spoke of partnership and love rather than debt and obligation. "We started this as strangers," Alessandro said softly. "I want to begin again as partners, as equals, as people who choose each other every single day." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "You romantic bastard. Is that a yes?" Instead of answering, she kissed him, hard and fierce, and full of promise. When they broke apart, both were breathless. "Kiss me again in 50 years, she said against his lips. "Ask you what? If I regret marrying Alessandro Moretti, and what will you say?" Sophia smiled, the expression lighting up her entire face. "I'll say that marrying you was the best terrible decision I ever made." He laughed, the sound rich and warm in the evening air. "Terrible. Absolutely terrible. You've ruined me for safe choices, Alessandro Moretti. You've made me believe in impossible things. You've turned me into the kind of woman who starts community centers and fights city councils and falls in love with complicated men." "Good," he said, pulling her closer. "I never wanted you safe. I wanted you alive." As the stars appeared above Toronto, Sophia leaned against her husband's shoulder and thought about the girl who had signed that first contract 6 months ago. That girl had been terrified, desperate, convinced her life was ending. She had been wrong. Her life had been beginning. The warehouse behind them would open tomorrow to children eager to paint their dreams. 2 seniors ready to share their stories, 2 families determined to build something lasting. It would be loud and chaotic, and imperfect and beautiful, just like the love that had made it possible. Ti amo mia moglie, Alessandro whispered against her hair. Ti amo anch'io mio marito, she whispered back. In the distance, the city lights twinkled like promises they were both finally ready to keep. The end deal like this video, if the story touched your heart, subscribe for more emotional tales, and share with someone who believes in the power of true love. And let us know in the comments. We love connecting with our global community of romance lovers.